Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Karim Mualla. I'm the senior tutor and lecturer at the School of Informatics. Welcome to the University of Leicester. This is going to be a taster lecture for our potential new students. Now, usually this would take place in a lecture theater where you will see our beautiful campus, speak to us, the members of staff, maybe other students. But obviously, given the unprecedented situation, we are going to do this from my home. This is my home, and the taster lecture is going to be a brief lecture about one of the modules, one of the topics that we introduce in the first year, probably even semester one, year one for our new students. Now, in the School of Informatics, you will learn different programming languages, whether it's web development, mobile applications, internet, desktop, back-end, front-end design. You will learn skills in programming and other system administration that are relevant to your future work, employment, industry specific. Now, the School of Informatics covers different topics. It's all based on our state-of-the-art research. Now, you will have system administration and databases, networking, programming mobile applications, internet security, cloud computing, and many other. One of the subjects that we introduce for semester one, year one students is called computing fundamentals. Now, computing fundamentals is one of those modules that introduces multiple subjects in one. It's an introduction to several fronts that would be very relevant for the whole process from year one to year three, or year four if you do an MCOM degree, and of course, master's if you decide to go through that path in the future. Computing fundamentals cover basic web development, front end, JavaScript, designing, introduction to protocol stack and networking, computing fundamentals in terms of the infrastructure and hardware, operating systems. And at the same time, we discuss a little bit of internet security. Now, internet security is one of those topics that is very relevant today. Everything is based online, and the security of that is essential. So, I'm going to choose this topic right now called internet security. It's an introduction to that subject, which we teach in Computing Fundamentals Semester 1, Year 1 at the School of Informatics. So, welcome to my home, and let's begin this taster lecture. Hi, everyone. So, we chose today the topic of internet security, a taster lecture, so it's a taste of what's to come. And before we start, let me just give you a quick ICT history. Did you know that the first computer ever built was called the ENIAC? It started building in 1943, but it didn't finish until 1946. Just imagine all that time to build the first big, massive computer. We'll talk about the processing and capacity power of that computer in a second. It was actually built by J. Presper Eckert and John Malte at the University of Pennsylvania. Did you know that this ENIAC computer was occupying about 1,800 square feet? 1,800 square feet, just imagine. It used about 18,000 vacuum tubes, 18,000 vacuum tubes. And it weighed about 50 tons. This is how it looked like. 50 tons, that's how much it weighed. Now, there was a funny study that showed how many ENIAC computers that weighed 50 tons, and it's 1,800 square feet with 18,000 vacuum tubes. How many ENIAC computers can you fit inside one iPhone? And not just any iPhone, the first iPhone in 2005, 2007. Now, obviously, when I say fit inside, they mean in terms of the processing power, the capacity, the calculation of bits, etc. It was a completely different technology, so it's a not accurate study. But when they measured it in that respect, the answer was about 50 million ENIAC computers can fit inside one iPhone that you can put in your pocket, and not just any iPhone, the first one back in 2007. Anyway, so when we talk about the ICT history, notice that it's just from 1946. That's when the first computer was ever built. But what about the internet? Well, it started as an ARPANET, and it stands for Address Resolution Protocol, by the way, ARP. It happened and grew very rapidly in 1969. By the way, 1969, that's the same year we went to the moon. Anyway, we'll come back to that. Now, ARPANET became the technical core of what would then become the internet that you and I use today. The early ARPANET used what we call the Network Control Protocol, the NCP. Okay, now NCP usually is sometimes referred to as the Network Control Program back then. And by the way, the ARPANET was used mostly for Department of Defense purposes to connect different sites to share some sort of information about military aspects. That's how it started. Okay, so NCP back then was used rather than the TCP/IP suite protocol that almost every internet-based software uses today to communicate, which happened in 1983. So imagine TCP/IP only started in 1983. Back then in the ARPANET, it was NCP. So the internet was then born in 1990. Imagine, that's only 30 years ago. Another fact, fascinating fact. Do you know all the information, all the data that is today on the internet? Trillions and gazillions of bytes and megabytes and gigabytes on the internet today. It's only 10 years old. Only 10 years old. Can you think of 10 years? Where were we 10 years ago? Playing football or something. That all the information on the internet is 10 years old. So we're not only at the beginning of the information age, we haven't even began to scratch the surface of that information age. That's how important a career in informatics and computer science is. You can tell how rapidly evolving technologies move. Only from 1990, that's when the internet starts, and today all of our essential services in life depend on the internet to operate. Anyway, you're probably seeing this video on the internet. Okay, so let's move on. ICT history. Now, what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? If I ask you that question, well, you can't answer because you're watching a video. But if this was a lecture, which how I teach at the University of Leicester Department of Informatics, the blended learning technologies that we use, like top hat softwares, tools, online quizzes, interactivity and question and answers, this is done on a very high level. So always keep in mind that the blended learning recent technologies, when adopted, especially in computer science topics, they make the learning a completely different experience. Anyway, right now we're on a video. So if I ask you, what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? Well, in very simple words, the internet is a massive network of networks. It's a networking infrastructure. So it connects billions of computers. When I say computers, it could be switches, routers, hubs, all different types of IP-based systems that are forming a global infrastructure to form one big massive network. Think about it this way. Okay, so any computer, any device can communicate with any other device, computer for now, as long as they are both connected to this internet, to this network of networks. Okay, so information that travels over the internet does so via a variety of languages. Let's call them languages. Well, actually, we call them protocols. Okay, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. So every device is independent on this network of networks called the internet. What about the World Wide Web? Well, the World Wide Web is a way of accessing information over the medium of the internet. It's a way of accessing the information. Okay, so the web uses, for example, HTTP protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now, this is only one of the languages spoken over the internet. So think about it this way. It transmits data an information sharing model that is built on top of the internet. That's the World Wide Web. Okay? So it's a way of accessing and exchanging information. Anyway, we mentioned that today is about internet security. Well, an introduction to internet security. So let's talk about hacking, hackers, different types. Who are they? What do they do? The word hack is an old word now. It's used for a long time now, but it's very relevant. Internet security. Imagine everything today is based, almost everything is based online. So imagine if the security of that was not at a very high level and standard. So we teach that comprehensively at the University of Leicester. Now, let me just discuss quickly the different types of hacking. So you've got the ethical. First of all, what is a hacker? What is that? Well, let's say it's a security. It's someone who explores methods for breaching defenses and exploiting weaknesses in a computer system or a network. So not just a system or a device or a network. Okay, so someone who bypasses systems and let's say passwords, taking advantage of weaknesses left by those who developed those systems. Those who developed those systems. So programmers, system designers, developers, they had weaknesses in their solutions. That's what is exploited by what we call hackers. Okay, so we're going to discuss this a little bit. Usually a hacker is someone who has programming and technical skills. Okay, so what are the methods of hacking? Well, it can happen over the internet, websites, devices connected over the infrastructure of the internet, over the LAN, local area network, so inside an organization that has a LAN or a household or a cafe or whatever, locally on the same device, offline, we'll discuss that later, theft and deception using IP addresses, social engineering, telephoning, emailing also requires some programming and technical skills, but not as much as you think. You'd be surprised to see how little technical skills sometimes a hacker need to do damage. Okay, what are the types of hackers? You've got the black hat hacker, that's the malicious hacker, the villain. Usually violates computer security for different purposes and objectives. Well, you've got the white hat hackers. This is someone who is hired by a company to hack that company. Yes, after they do that, they generate a report and say, well, this is how we hacked you. Now, this is what you need to fix one item at a time in that list that we generated after hacking your systems. Okay, well, actually, there are multiple types of hackers. You've got the gray hat hacker, that's someone who's in between the white and black hackers. What does that mean? It means that they hack a company and then go to that company and say, well, this is how I hacked you. Now hire me to fix this for you in the future, so this doesn't happen again. So it's being like an ethical white hacker, but at the same time with different motives and objectives that could be interpreted as blackmail. That's called a gray hat hacker. Okay. What about so many different types? You've got the suicide hacker. That's someone who just wants to make as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, for no money reasons, just for pleasure and usually for self-satisfaction. And they would want to do this and cause as much damage as possible in a short amount of time because they know they're going to get caught and it will be eliminated later. So they do that and then they just move on whether they get caught or not. But they did cause a damage. You've got something called the blue hat hacker. This is someone who usually consults firms. You know, they do system testing for softwares before they launch. So they hack softwares before they are deployed and launched into the real world. So anyway, there are multiple types. Well, let's discuss some of those attacks. Now, just very briefly, I'm going to discuss with you some of the attacks that hackers usually follow and adopt. Okay, we've got one called the DDoS, denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack. What does that mean? Well, imagine if you are logging into Facebook. Now, obviously, Facebook has firewalls, great security, so it may be applied to a smaller business website that is not protected that well. But let's hypothetically say you're logging into Facebook. You put your username, and then you write your password incorrectly. And then you click submit. Okay, Facebook generates a message saying, please re-enter your password, it's incorrect. Okay, you do it again, submit. Facebook generates a message. You do it a third time, a fourth time, at 10 times. Facebook doesn't care. Well, Facebook will never let you in unless you put the correct password. Now, although humans can't process this amount of information quickly, but just imagine for a second if you were able to do this a million times in less than a second. Facebook, as a system hosted on a server, will not be able to handle all those requests. So it will crash. The server will crash. Now, when this happens, you are denying others from accessing this service. Denial of service attack. Obviously, it could happen to a lower security level website or program. So there are multiple different types of that. It's used to make a machine or network resource inaccessible to other users. We've got, for example, something called a ping flood attack. You know, ping, when you ping another device, it's a Windows command where you would check that the communication is correct. Well, there's something called a ping flood attack. What is that? Basically, it's a denial of service attack in which the attacker attempts to overwhelm a targeted device with what we call an ICMP protocol, Internet Communication Message Protocol. What is an ICMP echo request? ICMP echo request is when a system noticed an error and they want to check that the communication is still online between those two devices. So they send a ping between them with an ICMP echo request to check that the other device is still there. The other device, when they sees an ICMP echo request, they normally always reply back saying, yes, I'm still here. So you are guaranteeing a reply from a device. Okay, so you overwhelm this victim targeted device or program or server with ICMP echo requests. Now, when you send those packets, those many numbers of packets, it causes the target to become inaccessible to normal traffic because there's normal traffic happening on this device. Okay, when the attack traffic comes from multiple devices or sources, now the attack then becomes a DDoS or distributed denial of service attack. Okay, so this is called a ping flood attack. There's another one that is called a Smurf attack. A Smurf malware is used basically to generate a fake echo request. Fake. When we say fake, we're talking it contains a spoofed IP address. A spoofed means that it's not there, it's not correct. It's just trying to fool the device, the source victim target of that IP, that it's actually coming from a legitimate source, but it's not. Okay, so this is actually the target server address, the spoofed IP address. Now, the request is sent to an intermediate IP broadcast network. So you have a broadcast IPs targeting one device victim. Now, the request is transmitted to all of the network hosts on the network, which causes the server to crash or the other users not to be able to access the same device. Now, have you ever logged into a website and it showed you a page, sorry, temporary unavailable, we'll be back shortly. This is an automated page that is programmed to appear when a denial of service attack takes place and the server has crashed. By the way, usually denial of service attacks, they can quickly overcome this. They can quickly restart, reboot, and then go back online. However, imagine if it was an e-commerce massive website, like, I don't know, John Lewis, Mark and Spencer, Tesco, whatever. Do you know what it means to be down for a few hours? That's hundreds of thousands of pounds lost, if not more, like bigger websites like Amazon. And by the way, this happened before. If you research online a history of denial of service attacks, you will see so many of them. Anyway, in this introductory taster lecture, I wanted to speak about a computer virus. What is it? How it replicates itself. A computer worm that spreads over the internet. I wanted to talk about a Trojan horse, which cost just in 2017 millions of pounds and millions of dollars across the world for multiple companies, such as Pitaya in South Korea, for example, where they had to pay the ransomware to release their system. This is called ransomware attack, a Trojan horse attack. There are so many different types of internet security threats that you need to know, and I will teach you those if you join us. Anyway, I have to wrap this up now because this is a taster lecture and it has to be within that short amount of time. But I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon, hopefully, at the University of Leicester School of Informatics. My name is Dr. Karim Mualla. I'm your senior tutor and lecturer at the department. Thank you very much. Bye bye.